صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
على محبة الزهراء الثانية غفر الله لكم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بتعجيل في ظهور إمام صاحب العصر والزمان الثالثة بيعلاه.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Before we start, for all the generous donations and for all the marhumin who have passed away in this life and for all the loved ones and deceased of the loved ones, can we please recite the Surah Al-Fatiha. Before that, talat salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا غريب يا مظلوم عطشان كربلاء. ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أبا صالح يا مدرك الثاري كم ترى وغيظك وار غير أنك كاظمه. وهل يملك الموتور صبرا وحوله يروح ويغدو آمل السرب غارمه. أتنسى أبي الضيم في الطف مفردا تحوم عليه للوداع فواطمه. أتنساه فوق الترب منفطر العشاء تناهبه سمر الردى وصوارمه. Imam al-Hussein stands amongst the enemies holding his dear son Ali al-Asghar. This is the father who today watched his son massacred as a child in his 2 arms. The tears of thousands of prophets in his eyes, and the blood of Muhammad stained on his palms. Feeling the arrow, he waves his tiny arms, and the voice of his father no longer comes. The eyes of Hussein, blinded before his death, watching as his young child an arrow harms. Lord, I hold this lifeless child in my hands. My stand against this tyrant I have fulfilled. When they look back at this day, they shall ask, for what sin was Hussein's young infant's blood spilled? With my child's blood I've defeated the sword. Tomorrow by millions he shall be held, and whenever they hold a child, they'll cry. Hussein's beloved infant in his arms was killed. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We recite in ziyarat وارث السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. Peace be upon you, O Ibrahim, the friend of Allah. نور مجالسكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. الثاني غفر الله لكم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Dear brothers and sisters and scholars, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Between your eyelid and eye, drawn in every tear, you'd cry. Between your eyelid and eye, drawn in every tear, you'd cry. You'd stand alone, asking for help. And did you ever ask why? Calamities you witnessed left our own eyes so distressed that we'd cry, as if horses' hooves were on our own fathers pressed. You stood alone on that day. You stood alone on that day, every love taken away, when alone you spoke to your Lord. Behind you we'd come and we'd pray. Yes, 1,000 years have passed. Yes, 1,000 years have passed. 10,000 years it'll last, for it lives in our memory as if of yesterday's past. They spoke of you as if you died, and your plight. Instead, you brought our souls to life with your light, Your pain is not yours to own. Your pain is not yours to own. Your pain to millions is shown. Yes, millions witness your day, so hear their cries. Hear their cries. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Ibrahim, the prophet of Allah, built the Kaaba, and once he built the Kaaba, he was ordered to make a call to all of mankind. Once he built the Kaaba, he was told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ يَأْتُوكَ رِجَالًا وَعَلَى كُلِّ ضَامِرٍ يَأْتِينَ مِنْ كُلِّ فَجٍّ عَمِيقٍ. That is the chapter 22 chapter of Hajj, verse 27. It says, and proclaim the pilgrimage amongst the men. But the reply from Ibrahim was that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who do I cry out to? There is no one in front of me, in which Allah says, you do as you are told, and we will open up the heavens for you. So Ibrahim made that call. And Ibrahim made that call. The call was what? Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. And so every single human being heard the call of Ibrahim through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every human being, even in the loins of the fathers and the wounds or the wombs of the mothers, heard that call. And so every single year they go towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pledge their allegiance. That same call, that same predicament was shown on the land of Karbala. On the day of Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein would stand in front of the thousands, he was told to make that call, هل من ناصر ينصرنا.
لبيك يا حسين لبيك يا حسين لبيك يا حسين.
هل من ناصر ينصرنا. Imam al-Hussein was in the same predicament as Ibrahim. Why? Because when he called هل من ناصر ينصرنا, was there any followers in front of him? No. Through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the call of هل من ناصر ينصرنا was answered by every single believer in Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam till the day that we live in today, and that is the day 2013. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Imam al-Hussein made that call, and we answer that call. On a night like this, Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam speaks to the night itself, and she says, Ya layl tawwil sa'atak. She speaks to the night and she says to the night, O night, the night before Ashura, prolong your hours. Prolong your hours, for I want to stay with Hussein until the time will come, until that fate will come. I want to be protected by the sons of Rasulullah. I want to be protected by those who answered the call of Imam al-Hussein. And so on the night before Ashura, she is seen embracing her brother Hussein, embracing her brother Abil Fadhil Abbas, but also Abil Fadhil Abbas would be seen marching outside the camps. The same camps that a day later in the afternoon would be torched. Why? Because the protector Abil Fadhil Abbas wouldn't be there anymore. This is the night before Ashura. Within history, many tales and legends and folklores of what? Of sacrifice has always been mentioned in the books. But what is so special about the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? Why is it that every single year the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the followers of the Prophet, would come and congregate together? They'd come and congregate together, they'd wear black out of respect and to honor the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, to mourn Imam al-Hussein. But what was special about this sacrifice, the sacrifice that Imam al-Hussein gave? You see, this sacrifice mimics the same sacrifice of Ibrahim Khalilullah. And when we say Assalamu alayka ya Ibrahim Khalilullah, we say Assalamu alayka ya Waritha, meaning the inheritor of Ibrahim. Not only did you inherit this call, Imam al-Hussein, but you inherited the calamities of Ibrahim. For Ibrahim was forced to do what? To slaughter his child. When the dream came to him and he told his son, I have to slay you, this is the call from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the young child told him, you can do what you like, for we are submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then that child was replaced by what? A sheep. But on the land of Karbala, on Ashura, that same call was made when Imam al-Hussein was forced
to sacrifice his son, the 6-month-old Rabi'a. But no sheep was replaced. It was the actual son of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, in which the arrow pierced his young neck. In any case, there are many factors which define a sacrifice. But why is it that this sacrifice is special? There are 5 factors. These 5 factors are the character who is responsible for the sacrifice, the mechanisms involved in the sacrifice, the nature of the sacrifice, the size of the sacrifice, and the results of that sacrifice. In terms of the character of the person responsible for the sacrifice, we need to look no further than Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam al-Hussein, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the grandson of Rasulullah. Imam al-Hussein, who Imam al-Hassan would praise, Imam Ali would praise, the Prophet would praise, the man who brought this religion would praise. But who is Hussein? Was he a custodian from the custodians of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is he an imam in which obedience is incumbent upon us? Is he a reformer in which he came to reform the land? These questions we have to ask ourselves in order to know the character who is responsible behind this sacrifice. And when he says, I only enjoin good and forbid evil, this is the path of Hussein. This is the character of Hussein. He wanted nothing in this world but to please and to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Yes, the mechanisms or the factors or the parts in which the history unfolded in terms of the tale of Karbala or in terms of the story of Karbala, this is the mechanisms. So in terms of history, Yazid took power. Yazid was a man of ill nature. Imam al-Hussein was a man of good nature. And therefore this is part of the mechanisms in which the sacrifice unfolded. And for him to re-establish the teachings of the Prophet, he had to do what? Sacrifice himself, which was part of the mechanisms of the tragedy of Karbala. In terms of the nature, that was just sacrifice. The sacrifice was what? It was of torture. It was of blood. It was of sacrifice. It was of pain. It was of a brother losing his brother. It was of a mother losing her son. It was of a father losing his son. It was of a sister losing her brother. All of this becomes the nature in which the sacrifice took place, which was to grab the emotions of that human being, in which he can emotionally connect with that sacrifice. This is the emotional, or this is the nature of the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. In terms of the size, so you can see for yourselves, it was 72 companions, 18 family members, women and children against thousands of enemy soldiers. This is the size in which the sacrifice took place. If it was an equal army, you could then make the case that the size was equal length, or you could make the case that it wasn't a pure sacrifice. But when the man takes his women and his children and a select few companions and his family, then you know he is sacrificing only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course the results, we see the results today. Everyone, whoever wants to make a stand against oppression, whoever wants to make a stand against injustice, uses Imam al-Hussein's message. Those who want to be emotionally attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do? They connect with the message of Imam al-Hussein. The results are far and wide for us all to see. The results is that even year upon year, millions of people visit Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. Researchers lately found that 25 million over a period of 3 weeks, 25 million visit the grave of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. And that's why when they say every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala, this is an incorrect statement, brothers and sisters. An incorrect statement. For there is no source or tradition or narration which backs that every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. Why? Because there is no day like Ashura and there is no land like Karbala. That is why there is no such thing as every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. No narration states that every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. And Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, when he speaks to his brother, he says, La yawm كَيَوْمِكَ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ الْحُسَيْنِ. There is no day like your day, Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. If we were to say that every day is Karbala and every land is Ashura, we may fall into the trap of trivializing the message of Imam al-Husayn. That's why we have to make sure that the day of Ashura is a day of solemn, a day of tragedy, a day of no smiles, a day of less talk, a day of contemplation, a day of connecting with Imam al-Husayn emotionally. Just to emotionally connect with Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. Reflect upon your lives. If you can get out of work, then please do so. If you can get out of school, then just for this one day, just for this one day of the whole 365 days, do so. Why? So you can connect to Imam al-Husayn better. To connect to Imam al-Husayn better on the day of Ashura. However, when we do say that every day is Ashura, what we mean is that every day is a struggle against injustice. That's what we may mean. Every day is a struggle against injustice. Every day is a struggle against tyranny. For tyranny is now prevalent within the whole of Middle East. What we see in Bahrain, what we see in Palestine, what we see in Syria, all of this is tyranny. Does that mean because we don't take from the message of Imam Hussein every single day, we neglect that? No, every day is a struggle, but there is no day like Ashura. And there is no land like Karbala. Sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ثانية غفر الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Imam Hussein alayhi salam stands all alone. He stands all alone in Karbala after his brother Abbas is slain. On the banks of Euphrates, his companions have all been martyred. And so he stands alone and he looks left and right and he calls out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا. A call is made from behind him. Footsteps are heard walking towards Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. And if I can ask the organisers just to dim the lights as much as they can now, before we enter the state of mourning for Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. The call is made from behind him and he hears a little baby crying. When he looks back, he sees Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam walking towards him with his 6-month-old child, Ali al-Asghar. He says, "Why do you bring me my child?" Sayyida Zainab says, "This child has no nourishment. His mother, due to the lack of water and food and drink, she has no more nourishment within her, and so she cannot feed this child. If we do not find water for this child, surely he will die within the next couple of hours. Go towards the enemy and see if they have a bit of mercy, just an ounce of mercy within their hearts, to give this child some water. Just an ounce of mercy within their hearts." So Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam brings his young child, Ali al-Asghar, towards the enemies. The enemies are confused. Do they fight? Do they not fight? For Hussein has now come towards us. We've killed all of his companions. We've killed his family members. Do we shower him with arrows? Do we fight him with spears? He has a child. Tension is now brewing within the enemy camps. Confusion is now brewing within the enemy camps. What do? For Imam al-Husayn raises this 6-month-old child towards them. When he raises the child, he says, "Every father is overjoyed with his son's birth. And I wonder if my enemies have sons. What father, evil or good, can bear the weight of knowing that his infant murdered becomes?"
He says to them, if you have any mercy in your hearts, if you have a war against me, but what is the sin of this child? If you have a difference of opinion with me, what is the sin of this 6-month-old baby? The river of Farat is flowing with water. All I need is a couple of drops so that he doesn't die in my hands right now. The enemy soldiers, they see this, what do they say? Some of them say, we should fight him, no mercy. Some of them begin to cry and weep. Some of them unsheathe their swords and turn towards Umar bin Sa'ad and say, if you do not quench this baby's thirst, we will kill you. Here Umar bin Sa'ad looks towards one cursed man. He looks towards this man called Harmalah. Harmalah, put them to sleep. Harmalah, make them be quiet, for there is tension within the camps. Harmalah says, what do I do? Do I strike the father or do I strike the son? Umar bin Sa'ad says, strike the son. Umar bin Sa'ad says, do you see the glistening of the neck of that young child? Do you see it shining? Harmalah says, yes. He says, so shoot the arrow in the neck of that child. He says, shoot the arrow in the neck of that child. This my child, a 6-month, what was his sin? It tortures me to see children thirsty. I forget my own thirst and only saw his. Upon my beloved the pangs of thirst would prey. So Harmalah then does what? Harmalah makes the biggest statement of unmercilessness. Harmalah makes the biggest statement of torture, of mercilessness that he can, and he pulls back the arrow or the crescent and he shoots that arrow into the neck of the 6-month-old child. But the tragedy is when the 6-month-old child feels the pain, feels the heat of the arrow, he starts to flutter his hands like a bird would do so if he was slaughtered. Imam al-Hussein says nothing. Imam al-Hussein says nothing. He takes the blood from the child's neck and throws it towards the sky. There he testifies that this is the sacrifice that he has made. There he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the sacrifice that I've made. And by Allah, not a drop of blood returned back to the floor. But the crisis is that when he has to go back toward the camps, holding the slaughtered 6-month-old child, holding the slaughtered 6-month-old child in his hands. Here, the first person to greet him in the camps is whom? A young girl called Sukaina. Sukaina, who was let down. Sukaina, who had hope in her brother Abbas, in her uncle Abbas alayhi salam. There was no water, but she had hope in Hussein. Why? Because she didn't think that a young child would be slaughtered because of a couple of drops of water. So she comes to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, almost happy. She says to him, oh father, it seems like you have quenched the thirst of my brother Abdullah, and surely you have some water remaining. Surely you have some water remaining for us and for the rest of the children. Here Imam al-Hussein looks towards her daughter and he says, Tilaqi Hussein دم الطفل بإيده اشحال اللي يجتلب حضنه وليده سائل وترش شفه من وريده وذبل السما وللقاع ما خل ذا سكينة ساز يا ابويا الطفل الماء خذته بسهم العدا مذبوح جبته شنو الذنب خويا اللي عملته والماي حاضر ما شربته There Imam al-Hussein goes back towards the camp and offers the child towards his mother, Rabab, and the women and children are heard screaming, Wa Abdullah, Wa Muhammadan, Wa Aliya, Wa Husayna. After this tragedy, none remained from the camp of Imam al-Hussein to defend him. This is the final moment. All of these 10 days have led to this final moment, the moment of Imam al-Hussein going towards his fate. Going towards his fate. Here he stands alone. He stands alone in the middle of that scorching heat. As he makes his way, or he is about to make his way, he goes back into the camps to finally bid farewell to the women and children. For the women and children, their only hope now remaining of safety and security was Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Their protector Abu Fadhil Abbas was slain on the Farat, but now Imam al-Hussein represented hope for them. Imam al-Hussein represented security for them. And so Imam al-Hussein says to them, I now bid you farewell. A woman grabs his hand, a woman grabs his chest, a woman grabs his waist. Women and children surround Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, saying, Wa Husayna, Wa Ghurbata, Wa Ghurbata, until he heads towards the battlefield. But as he is going to get up on his horse, he hears a young girl crying. He hears a young girl screaming out to Imam al-Hussein, oh father, just come back 1 more minute, let me spend with you. This young daughter was Sukaina. When Sukaina is met by Imam al-Hussein, he embraces her, and then she says one line that really cuts the heart. She says to him, oh Imam al-Hussein, please sit down, let me sit in your lap, and please wipe my head, for I know this will be the last time that I can do so with you. This is the last time that I can spend with you. Please wipe my head like you do the orphans, like you have done for the rest of the orphans of Bani Hashim. Ya boy, يقول لا تخفي علي. يا ابو يقول لا تخفي علي، هذه راحتك لو بعد جايه. يا ابو يا ان كان رايح هاي هي، اخذني وياك عنك ما اقدر اصبر، اريد ابكي وازيد اليوم همي، ما طولك يا ابوي حسين يمي. Father, tell me, don't hide anything from me. Is this your final farewell, or will you return? If you are going, then so be it, but please let me come with you. I want to cry and be with you as long as I can hold you near. Then he says farewell to Sukaina. One final time, Imam al-Hussein attempts to ride the horse and go towards battle. As he rides the horse, he has heard, there is a cry called from the women, Mahlan, Mahla. Sayyida Zainab says, wait, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Here Imam al-Hussein is surprised. I've already bid farewell to you, Ya Sayyida. I've bid farewell to you. I've told you to be patient. What is it more that you want? You've cut my heart. Sayyida Zainab embraces Imam al-Hussein for the last time. She embraces Imam al-Hussein. She kisses him from two distinguishing areas in his body. The first one was his neck, and the second one was his chest. Imam al-Hussein is still confused. He says, what are you doing, Sayyida? What are you doing, my dear sister? Here, she says to him, on my mother's deathbed, On my mother's deathbed, my mother Fatima Zahra told me of one thing I have to do when you see Hussein alone in the lands of Karbala. One thing I want you to do when you see Imam al-Hussein saying, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. One thing I want you to do is kiss him on his neck and kiss him on his chest. Why, Ya Sayyida? Why shall he kiss him on his neck and why on his chest? For surely the neck of Imam al-Hussein will be severed by Shimir, and surely the chest of Imam al-Hussein will be trampled upon by the horses. ريض يا خوي حسين لي عندي وصية من الزكية قالت اليوم الغاضرية لو شفت الغالي علي ما ظلك الواحد بجيه شميه من نحر الشفيه وحبيه من صدر إلي. My mother told me when on that day that you see Hussein alone, kiss him on his neck and kiss him on his chest. Then he bids his last farewell to Sayyida Zainab. And then he rides towards his fate. He rides towards his fate, Imam al-Hussein. He faces the enemy saying, Ana Hussein ibn Ali. I am the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Know that you are going to slay this grandson of Rasulullah. But no one takes heed, and they shower Imam al-Hussein with arrows and with spears until the wounds were too much for Imam al-Hussein. This is the last time that he has entered battle. The wounds are too much for Imam al-Hussein, and so he falls to the ground. As he falls to the ground, stones are thrown towards Imam. The stones are thrown towards Imam al-Hussein. An arrow strikes him in his heart. In his heart. So when he pulls the arrow out, blood is gushing from his chest. He takes this blood and he throws it towards the sky. But then he takes more blood and he wipes it on his face and he says, surely I shall meet my grandfather with blood covering my face. But slowly, he became exhausted from all the wounds. He was lying there on the sands of Karbala. As he was lying there, he was reciting the verses from the Quran. When he recited the ayah from the Quran, every single man that attempted to come towards Imam al-Hussein would become afraid and walk away. How can they kill a man who is reciting verses from the Quran? Until that cursed man Shimr said, what are you waiting for? And take him out of his misery, put him out of his misery. But as he was coming closer, he was heard, Imam al-Hussein was heard to be saying, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. This is when there was a call, a cry heard from the hill next to Shimr and Imam al-Hussein. Sayyida Zainab sees Imam al-Hussein on the floor. She also sees Shimr walking to him. She says, Shimr, don't kill Imam al-Hussein. Don't kill Imam al-Hussein, don't slaughter him. But Shimr doesn't take heed. He comes towards Imam al-Hussein. But I shan't speak further about the events, for we shall leave it for tomorrow. And they're very heart-wrenching to hear. But
Can I please ask that you stand for the recitation of the Laqmiya Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'll take literally just 2 minutes at a time, inshallah. صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بجفوفك شيل آخر عزيز وأغلى غالي، بجفوفك تعالي وشيل دلال بدالي، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، 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 بجفوفك شيل آخر عزيز وأغلى غالي، بجفوفك تعال وشيل دلال بدالي، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، عزم من مكة لحسين قصد طف كربلا يشوف، ما ظنتها ليتام تلاقى بكربلا الخوف، عزم من مكة لحسين قصد طف كربلا يشوف، ما ظنتها ليتام تلاقي بكربلا الخوف، نادوا بس بالعيون عاليمن هذه السيوف، يا حسين اسمع الصوت نريدك يمنه الطوف، بجفوفك سكن هاليتام بدمع الإحساس، بجفوفك ابعد هالخطر وابعدها هالناس، طفلة تنادي بويا ما حضنته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، طفلة تنادي بويا ما حضنته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، من طب كربلا حسين دنت من عند زينب، نادت يا ابن الأطياب أريد مني تقرب، أرد أرسل على الحال وأنا دلالي يلهب، أرد أسأل على الحال ولا دلالي يلهب، قالوا عني ترحون وظل بالحسرة أنحب، بجفوفك امسح خويا راسي مثل ليتام، بجفوفك اجبر خاطري وسكنها الآلام، زينب أنا والقلب جبرته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، زينب أنا والقلب جبرته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، هذا خير طلب منك طلبته، طلع من خيمة حسين حمل طفلة بوريده، طلع من خيمة إن شاء الله، طلع من خيمة حسين حمل طفلة بوريده، خطوة 2 واشتاق دلال العضيده، طلع من خيمة حسين حمل طفلة بوريده، خطوة 2 واشتاق دلال العضيده، طولك خويا عباس أنا الساعة أريده، طولك خويا عباس أنا الساعة أريده. عبد الله طفل قام يأشر ليك بيده. عبد الله طفل قام يأشر ليك بيده. بجفوفك تذكر من تشيله ومن تلعبه. بجفوفك ينام ويغفى قلبه ويا قلبه. قوم انظر علي من حضنته هذا خير طلب منك طلبته. قوم انظر علي من حضنته هذا خير طلب منك طلبته. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبي الفضل العباس واخته زينب جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. إلهي بمريض كربلاء زين العابدين يا رب عافي وشافي جميع المرضى على خص من أوصانا بالدعاء يا الله. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك جنبنا معاصيك اجعل عواقب أمورنا خيرا يا الله. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأواله ومن الذابين عنه من المستشهدين بين يدي يا الله. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح خدمة الحسين نودي لهم ثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة قبلها صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Whilst you're reciting the Fatiha, just let you know that Sheikh Ilahi is going to be giving you a brief presentation or just a brief talk about rituals associated with today. So please, both brothers and sisters of the English and the Arabic, please stay for the next 5 or 6, 7 minutes and Sheikh Ilahi will address you inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. علم الله أجورنا